I speak to you in the name of the one holy and living God. Do you accept the premise proclaimed by the prophet Isaiah, some 750 or 60 years before Jesus was born? It's a promise. Isaiah speaks on behalf of God. Look, I am placing a foundation stone in Jerusalem, a firm and tested stone. It is a precious cornerstone that is safe to build on. Whoever believes need never be shaken. What a wonderful promise. Isaiah is speaking of the temple in Jerusalem, the temple which is the heart and the foundation of the Hebrew tradition. The temple, the center, which can be trusted to be the foundation of the Hebrew's life. And do you affirm another message that comes, 50 years after Jesus has died? And we just heard it read in 1 Peter. Come to Jesus, a living stone. See the evolution here? Come to Jesus, a living stone, though rejected by mortals, yet chosen and precious in God's sight. And like living stones, let yourselves, that would be us, let yourselves be built into a spiritual house, living temples, to be a holy priesthood. When we accept these proclamations, we are asserting God is the center. God is the bedrock, the foundation of our lives. Now you might push back and say, yeah, Debra, but that's ancient text. I mean, even the text around Jesus is 2,000 years old. Well, this week in our Exodus class, Mike reminded us of the words of a 20th century prophet and philosopher, Paul Tillich, and he describes it this way: God is the very ground of our being. So let me ask you, how many of you believe this is true? Raise your hands. I see hands here. I wish I could see all of your hands. But I'm assuming that many of you affirm that God is the center, the ground of your being. And here is the good, though incredibly challenging news. Acknowledging God as the bedrock, the foundation of our lives, requires a reordering of everything else. Yes, you heard that correctly. Claiming God as the bedrock of our lives requires a reordering, a reprioritizing of everything in our lives. And I didn't say throwing away. I said reprioritizing. You see, by choosing God, we commit ourselves to turn away from competing loyalties. So in the biblical times, these competing loyalties, or false gods, had names like Baal, Moloch, Ashtoreth, Chemosh, Artemis, and others. Our ancient ancestors carved their gods in wood and molded them in gold. These were pagan gods, gods that were in competition with Yahweh, the one true God of Israel. Well, today, our false gods have different names. They have names like money, youthfulness, religion, politics, rights and freedom, sex, sports, celebrity, drugs. You put your own one in the list. And I would argue that in the position number one is self. But how do we know when these are false gods or idols? We know this when we are occupied with an inordinate amount of our attention, action, or resources directed toward one of these gods. Now please underline that word inordinate. None of these interests money, youthfulness, politics, religion, rights and freedom, sex and sports, celebrity, drugs and self. None of them in and of themselves is a false god. In fact, they can be worthy aspects of our lives. Idolatry comes into play when we devote an unwarranted or a wasteful amount of our attention, action, or resources to them. It's when we ascribe a surplus of meaning or value to these interests that they become false gods or idols. So, do you see what's happening here? By claiming to revere the one holy and living God, and at the same time making great offerings and sacrifices of our attention, action, and resources to these false gods or idols, we are effectively condemning ourselves to live in the middle of a combat zone. Think about this. At best, we are restless, kind of anxious, and at worst, worried sick or to death, as our false idols compete with the one holy and living God for our attention, action, and resources. You've all been there with me. You know, I really want another new car. And I'd have to decrease my pledge to the church. So what shall we do? What shall we do about this? Let me suggest that in an unforeseeable twist of events, the onslaught of COVID-19 addresses our dilemma. The insidious intrusion of this grim virion shut down historic institutions, power brokering agencies, and brought the world to its knees. And I love what someone in centering prayer had to say about this past week in our Zoom meeting. She said, "It is as if God has sent all of us to our rooms." I don't know about you, but that one hit home for me. I cannot tell you how many times I heard these words. "Young lady," that was always a bad sign. "Young lady, go to your room and write 500 times, 'I will be kind to my little brother.'" Yeah. But I digress. So here is the startling paradox. The cost of the pandemic is unfathomable. It's immeasurable to the victims and families and those who've lost their livelihood and their homes and their hope. And, this is an and, not a but, and at the very same time, the shutting down of public institutions has created the spaciousness within which we can go to our rooms. In fact, we've been instructed to go to our rooms, to examine ourselves, to reorder and to reprioritize our lives, while the earth heals the water, the air, and the atmosphere. So I'd like to suggest that the question facing us this morning is this: will we consent to this moment and reallocate our attention, action, and resources to foster right relationship with God, with all people, and the earth? It's a big ask. Or will we join our ancestors wandering around in the desert, complaining that life is difficult? We are tired of eating manna, we want some good meat, and we want to go back to Egypt. We want to get on with our travel plans. Well, here's the thing. We cannot go back to Egypt. We cannot go back to Egypt because Egypt represents the way things used to be. And the way things used to be is not good enough for God. It's not good enough because we sacrificed an inordinate amount of our attention, action and resources to idols and false gods that compromise our relationship with God, with other people, and with the earth. It's that simple. It doesn't mean we're bad people. It means we're people who have been drawn into the culture, distracted from the foundation of our lives. And so there's no escaping the message that Moses receives when God is giving the stiff-necked, stubborn, idol-worshiping Israelites a second chance. You see, you remember this part of the story. Moses goes up the mountain and he gets into a cloud with God, and he's gone for a really long time. Meanwhile, all the Israelites are hanging out waiting for him. They can't see what's going on. They can't hear what's going on. They have no idea how long they're going to be stuck there, and they are not happy. So they decide, you know what? We're going to make our own God. They take off their bracelets and they melt them into a god. They create the golden calf and they start worshiping the golden calf. Just about that time, Moses comes down from the cloud with his 2 tablets. You've all seen that great movie, right? What happens? Crash. God is not happy. There's nothing more to do with those Israelites. But Moses doesn't give up on them. He goes back up that mountain and he pleads their case. Come on, give them a second chance. And God relents, but warns them, tells Moses to warn them not to get ensnared, by those worldly idols and false gods. Money, youthfulness, religion, politics, rights and freedom, sex, sports, celebrity, drugs, whatever it is you put on that list, and self. God speaks through Moses saying, you shall tear down those altars, break those pillars, and cut down those sacred poles, all those things you worship, because you shall worship no other God, because the Lord, the name of the Lord is jealous, because yours is a jealous God. Dear people of God, I believe with my whole heart, this is our second chance. This is our opportunity to reorder our lives, making God the bedrock, the foundation. And like living stones, letting ourselves be built into spiritual houses to be the holy priesthood. And what does that mean? That means that we become people who live to serve others. And how do we do that? By prioritizing relationship. It's the bottom line. Prioritizing relationship with God, with other people, and with the earth. Dear people of God, we are that holy priesthood. Life depends on us. Amen.